Welcome to Could Be Worse, a comedic literary analysis of dystopian novels. Given our primary materials, we'll be talking about intense and sometimes upsetting subjects. In this episode, we touch on suicide, murder, misogyny, general violence, police pursuit, car accidents, race, and nuclear war. We also swear a bunch. We encourage you to interact with that subject matter in whichever way is healthiest for you. Enjoy the show!
Sky smoky overhead, all your friends are dead, and your government heads despise you. Members of the church criticize you. Aliens annexed your country. When the rats or the plague or the bread or the circus or the prevailing lack of a meaningful purpose, if injustice or sadness or robots feel like a curse. Books never let you forget. It could be worse.
Hi, I'm Bridget Sievers. I am a radio host and an actor.
Hi, I am Caitlin Obum, and I do sketch comedy and songwriting and now podcasting in Seattle, Washington. Bridget, it's ours. It's our podcast.
Hey, we're doing it. We're doing the dang thing.
So how you been?
I've been good. I found out recently that I am allergic to something in my workplace, which is really, really fun. Developed it in the course of literally one day.
Like midday or like right off the bat you get there and something's afoot?
I worked on Saturday, and then I did not work on Sunday. And then I worked on Monday, and about 2 hours in, my eyes wanted to pop just right out of my skull. And
Gross.
They were burning red. And I know it wasn't pink eye because I have had pink eye.
Well, also,
but at the same
also,
time,
Bridget, you would still have
fear.
pink eye. If you had pink eye, it would have continued.
Yeah. So it faded when I got home. The thing is we haven't gotten in any new product at the, this is not at the radio station, by the way, this is at my retail job. We're also setting up for Christmas right now, which means we're kicking up a lot of glitter.
Oh.
So that might also be.
Yeah, you just, you got that good sparkle allergy.
Oh, yeah.
Can't handle that glitz.
Can never, even though Alamo Drafthouse has sent me a nice email, telling me, hey, we're releasing the My Little Pony movie. It's like, well, A, gross now, and B, can't go to that. Too much glitter.
But, what, is it gross? I thought that was supposed to be very good.
I mean, the people who are going to be going to the Alamo Drafthouse release of it, where they don't allow kids after a certain point.
What? Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm not going to engage too strongly with the realizations I have just had.
Nothing good is going to happen at the Equestria movie showing at 7 p.m. at night. Nothing good is going to happen there.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I'm also not saying that you have to, pay movie theater prices to see the My Little Pony film. I'm just saying I initially thought it was a judgment call about the franchise and where it's gone. Not necessarily.
I mean, the whole thing where they made them humans.
Wait, they make it...
But they weren't... Oh, yeah, you don't know about
that? They made them
that?
humans?
Yeah, at one point.
What the fuck?
Yeah, but they're not, humans. They're still, part pony.
That's called a centaur, is what that's called.
They just had, the wings and, But they... And, the...
Horns?
It's bad. It's bad. It just made them easier for adult men to sexualize.
Oh, boo.
Anyway, how was your week?
It was okay. Sketchfest was last weekend. It won't be by the time this podcast comes out, but for me, in this time stream, that's true. So I've kind of just been, getting my energy back after seeing some good shows. Saw a good Edmonton group I was very fond of called Good Game. Saw a historically Seattle-based group called Jason and Spike that is comprised of two young men called Jason and Spike. That was very good. But apart from that, it's mostly been editing videos for work and trying to find this book that we're gonna do today. I really wanted to find it in like a brick and mortar store, like preferably not like a Barnes and Noble, just like a small, because we're gonna be buying a bunch of books probably throughout the course of this, and so I just wanted to either find it like cheap secondhand, or if I was gonna give money to someone, have it like mean more than giving it to a big corporation. But I ended up buying it on Kindle because I'm morally bankrupt, but also because like I went to 2 different places in Seattle, a couple different places in South Center, and then this one place that I went to in Seattle, the lady was very nice. It's currently, as we're talking, banned book week, and so I went up and I asked for the book, which we were about to do, Fahrenheit 451, and she was like, oh, let's see if it's there, because this is one of our most frequently borrowed books. And I did not understand, because I was like, Madame, you do not run a library. And then we got over there and she was like, yep, someone stole it again. And she just went through the store for 20 full minutes. And I had intended this to be like I'm choosing to support a local independent bookstore to make them happy and help them thrive. And all I ended up doing was like making this lady aware that someone had like stolen her merchandise. So I just want to say I still would like to support them, so I'm going to give them a little plug. You should go buy a book from Secret Garden Books in Ballard. The people who work there are lovely. And stop stealing their fucking books. She was so sad. And then I was going to look at this place close to my house, but I Googled it, and I'm pretty sure it's a murder trap. Because I just looked up bookstores near me, and this place that's like right down the road was like, oh yeah, Zeus's bookstore. And I was like, I've never heard of this place. I love books. This is less than 10 minutes from my house. And then I clicked on the kind of like Google description page that they have for maps, and no one has ever interacted with this place at all. There's no other web presence online except for in Google Maps. And then the street picture is like the empty parking lot of like an independent window installation business that's in that space. And it's right next to this place called Becca's Adult Family Home that's been there forever, and I've never seen anyone enter or leave. So I just bought it on Kindle because I wanted to live.
Yeah, that's definitely a murder trap for teens and moms who are desperate to buy Life of Pi at the very last minute before the school year starts.
Nerds and nerd sires.
It's traps for people like you, and for moms who don't pay enough attention to their children.
But guess what, erudite serial murderers? Not today.
Maybe another day you'll catch Caitlin Opham. She's very easy to catch.
I'm not a quick runner. It's not where my physical strengths lie. I'm a strong swimmer, though. Anyway, as you might have gleaned...
Catch me on that lake, Jason. You can.
Me. I'm too speedy. I'm nimble in the waves.
I'm just gonna go swimming. You can't get me with that machete.
Yeah, we're doing Fahrenheit 451. That sort of got snuck into there a little bit. We thought...
Are y'all ready for Arson, the book?
Yeah, it's a little bit like Fight Club Arson. Like, yeah, there's something Fight Clubby about it, and we'll get into that in a second. But we thought it would be a good one to start with because it's a dystopia about books, and we're a podcast about dystopian books. So just like it was a word cloud sort of a decision-making process. But yeah, before we get into it, Bridget, may I summarize?
You may.
Cool. It's a bit of a long summary because there are just a lot of elements that we're going to talk about that I feel like you should be reminded of for context, dear listener, my love. So let's read it. Okay. Fahrenheit 451 tells the story of Guy Montag, a fireman in 24th century America. Only in this society, firemen don't put out fires, they set them, specifically to burn books. Books have been outlawed, independent thought and any nonconformist behavior is met with anger and suspicion. Montag, outwardly content but inwardly souring against his life, hinting to the reader of hidden books and private conversations in the park, meets a young girl named Clarice who questions his stated happiness and encourages him to consider nature, connection, and his place in the world. Blindsided by their first interaction, he returns home to find that his wife Mildred has attempted suicide and calls for an ambulance. Their caretaking is perfunctory and workmanlike, and the next morning, Mildred denies that she attempted to kill herself. Montag's dissatisfaction and confusion at the order and values of his life increase as he weathers the death of Clarice, a woman immolating herself with her books, and the suspicions and disgust of his co-workers and wife as he continues to question and buck the social mores of their society. With the help of an old professor by the name of Faber, he attempts to preserve books and cultivate independent thought. This being a dystopian book, it goes real badly. His wife leaves him, he is ordered to burn down his own home, he murders his boss and assaults his co-workers, and becomes the subject of a televised manhunt, finally escaping to join a society of vagabond men who live off the land and memorize books for when war inevitably destroys this civilization, at which point they will write down the books they have preserved in their minds and help mankind remember their better angels. The city is leveled by bombs, and the men, led by Montag, return to begin rebuilding. Bridget, what was your opinion of this book, in general?
Here's the thing. It's good. It's okay. I was not one of the people who read it in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I somehow managed to, throughout my high school experience, kind of dodge and weave around most of the, like, normal required reading books. Mm-hmm. This is another book I've seen people get into fights over when the school year is approaching fast. It's very interesting to me, a lot of, and we will get into this later, a lot of stuff we'll get into later, the predictive technology after a fashion that Bradbury gets into. It's very interesting. One thing that I do want to note, and this is in one of the essays that's afterwards, but I found out from going to an audition and reading the play script for Fahrenheit 451, in the movie as well as in the play, Clarice does not die, which her death is terrible. It's just kind of like
an off-screen
fridging
and in the book.
We think she got hit by a car, maybe. And then the movie came out, and then Bradbury was writing the play, and he's like, oh, she's with the book people. Oh, you know what? That is better. I'm gonna put that in the play. And so in the play even more so than the movie, Clarice is the person. It's not Granger, who brings Montag into the book people. Rather, it is Clarice, who is like, hello, old friend.
Huh.
My family ran away to here. What did you think we were talking about in our house the whole time? Guess what? We were reciting books.
It does seem like so big of a missed opportunity that it is silly. It is silly that didn't happen.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say my opinion real quick.
Yeah.
So I did read this in high school. And I was a really big fan of, I mean, I still am, but more so at the time, big fan of, like, sci-fi and speculative fiction. And I remember kind of having mixed feelings about it, and reading it this time, I was surprised at how much I really enjoyed just, like, not necessarily the story even, like, just the writing, because it's a beautiful book. It's a, like, incredibly lovely, visual, descriptive book. And it has a worthy heart, and just incredible swaths of prose, and just, like, I will say, like, because the internal dialogue of the content, like, with itself, like, it's allowed to be messy and contradictory and flawed, but oh boy, Bridget, do I like this book and absolutely hate the main character. I hate Guy Montag so much. Oh boy.
He's awful.
And it is, so, like, on the one hand, it is really, I do prefer the idea of a version of this where, like, Clarice lives and you get to see that she's kind of, like, joined this resistance. But also, like, Guy Montag doesn't deserve to see Clarice again.
I will say, rereading this, so I read it a couple years ago. I read it a couple of years ago, and I kind of wasn't super paying attention at the time. This podcast is also going to help me get better at reading. Again, I used to be a really prolific
absolutely.
reader, and now I just read scripts. So
you're an artist,
but yeah, it's interesting to me. Even the initial reaction between Guy and Clarice creeps me out
so much, so much.
And I feel like that was like, I don't know, a product of the times. This was written in 1951.
I think so.
Yeah, that was the initial publication. It appeared as the Fireman in 1950 in a magazine, like public, like Atlantic Monthly or whatever the hell they had back then. But it just is. Bad.
Yeah, it's like
it's
very unsettling, and it's made worse because like she introduces herself, and it's the most like, oh well, she would be played by Zooey Deschanel in a blonde wig, like manic pixie dream girl entrance of just like, hi, I like dandelions, and like literally says like, hi, I'm 17 and I'm insane.
I'm 17 and I'm insane. It's very like it's very and. A lot of stuff has come out recently about this, but the part where she's like, I'm 17 and I'm crazy. It feels very, Enemy, Darkness, Dementia, Raven Way.
I mean, the thing is, the first thing that I thought of while I was reading it was Stargirl.
Oh god, I love like, Stargirl in elementary school.
Guy Montag just straight up made
I have
Stargirl.
it on my bookshelf. I probably could not bear to read it
no,
again.
Don't do it, because I've been like, going through a bunch of old books because my mom was a children's librarian in the 90s, and so I got all of these books. And I just flipped through it and I couldn't do it. It just was ruining itself. It was ruining the very idea of pet rats. Like, it was just a rough situation. But with Clarice, it's even, like, there's even the section where it's like, he smelled apricots and strawberries, but that made no sense. They weren't in season. And it's like, come on, man. And then they're having this interaction, and Guy really clearly, to the audience states his age. He's 30. And Clarice introduced herself as 17. And then further on in the conversation, he checks in and he's like, you're 17? And she's like, well, almost 17. So this is like a 16-year-old child.
Yeah. This is, and it also like brings to mind of like, in the world, and I do want to talk about that, in the world that Bradbury has created, in this world of war, and like where war is a constant, where it makes the kids kind of, they go to school, at one point, one of the mothers says, 9 days out of 10.
Yeah.
So you only have to see your kid 4 times a month, And it's like, that's crazy.
Yes.
That's crazy. And that, like, they're driving rocket cars, and they're going to fun fairs. School takes up most of their day, and when they go home, they have all this, all they do is expend energy, and build it back up.
Yeah, it is.
There's never a moment of stillness for these kids. And she's like, I grow bored with it. And it's like, well, I wonder if all the other kids are like as mature, or are they allowed to be kids?
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is too, like, it also plays into that, like, one of the things that was so creepy is that he's just like, oh, you're so mature, like, you're probably more mature than my wife, and it's like, 16, bro, she's rubbing a flower under your chin, like, cool it.
That's not mature, that's...
And he's so focused on, like, how beautiful she is, and, like, sees his wife and, like, compares them, kind of, sort of repeatedly throughout the book. Physically compares them, but then to her says like, oh, like, you kind of make me wish I had a daughter. And it's like, ugh. Sir, you should not be a dad.
That's not, hey buddy, your internal monologue is not how you should be thinking about a daughter.
Because guess what? guess what, Bridget? The dumbest possible description of a human being is in this book, and it is him describing her, because he literally uses the term like her face was like a milk crystal.
Yeah.
What is that?
Gross.
Like, that sentence is like, if this book had been written with Clarice as the main character, which would have been a very dynamic book as well, like, he would sort of just be this like this sort of like lightning rod character for her, where she sort of like tests out ideas on him and is like, I have thoughts that affect adults, I'm an independent person. And then like fan fiction writers would write like inappropriate fan fictions about that relationship, but like that's the level of like that's where that phrase should have gone on. Like, milk crystal is like someone on fanfiction.net figuring stuff out, and like so much of this book is like beautifully written and like really good ideas behind it, but this whole, I mean, Guy Montag's relationships with all of the women in this book are so upsetting, but Clarice especially is like, ugh.
Yeah. He deifies her after her death, and it's very...
He deifies her before her death. Like, day one. I will say, so like when you meet his wife, and I mean, headphones didn't really exist in the way that they do now at the time, so like earbuds, essentially, he calls seashells. And he just sort of talks about Guy Montag's disgust at like the wife like going to sleep with these earbuds in, and I was like, as a super avid podcast listener, that stings a little.
Yeah, she's basically
Ray.
wearing those little Apple Air. She's got the little Apple earbuds.
So,
and she's listening to an app I have on myself on occasion used, which is the one where like you have the different sound effects to help you go to sleep. That helps me in
like a
hotel
noise
rooms,
machine.
because like a noise machine, and so you pop on the old iPad. But if you don't want to disturb anyone else, you pop in your headphones, and then you're like, time to listen to the soothing sounds of the rainforest or whatever. Which is interesting, because it's one of the many things where it's like, oh, this is predictive technology that he wrote about, because we have that now.
Well, I mean, and in the kind of like appendices of the book that I think both you and I have the same extra material, he talks about, decades later he was on a walk and a woman was running with like a Walkman and headphones, and he just kind of had this moment of like, oh my god. That would be a pretty cool moment. Congrats on that moment, Ray.
I mean, I would do like the Liz Lemon high-fiving a million angels from 30 Rock if I called that shit.
I nailed it.
I nailed it. My god. Oh no.
But yeah, felt very complicated about Clarice. Just tying a bow on that. And then she was just a continued symbol throughout the book, and she just sort of rando dies somewhere. It's like, okay.
You also spoke about how he has troubling interactions with the other women, and it's very fascinating to me that, like, the way his wife compartmentalizes and deals with trauma of like she pretty much does the dang thing for committing suicide at the beginning.
Yeah, she's like on her way.
And then is revived, and she definitely knows, but she's like, no, I didn't do that.
And like,
I would never. Why would I do something stupid like that?
She's so strongly on the way to death that like it's not just when they come in, they pump her stomach, but they also like replace all of her blood, because they're like, it's in her bloodstream. If this hits her brain, she's gone. So it wasn't in any way any, cry of any kind. It was just like, well, this is as much as I am able to take. And then she like wakes up the next morning. It's like, oh, okay, toast it is. Let's do this thing. But this whole book is so frustrating to have any empathy for that character as a reader, because Guy Montag
Because
just
you are
has
seeing it through.
none at all.
He hates her.
So much. Okay, this is another terrible descriptor. He at one point describes her as having, oh, what is it? He says her flesh was like white bacon.
Oh yeah, that was a gross one.
Like, how much do you have to hate somebody? Anyway, sorry, it's just like such a disgusting and like undermining and dehumanizing term.
The character descriptors are very interesting too, because he does note at one point when he's in the firehouse playing poker that all of the firemen look the same.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
And they're all kind of the modern action hero, which is like the blue-eyed, the dark hair with the salt and pepper in it, and the kind of perpetual 5 o'clock shadow that you can't really get rid of.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because what he like, I want to know your opinion on this because I feel like he pretty much directly said like, oh yeah, we're all white.
Oh yeah,
because he said under the ash their heritage showed they all looked the same. I kind of want to get to that in a second, but there's like there's also some kind of interesting race stuff going on in this book, sort of by virtue of like 2 offhanded comments and then a complete lack of anyone who isn't just like either white dude action hero, learned white professor, or like this kind of wan, glowingly white woman who is representative of something for Guy Montag. But I want to return real quick to Mildred, because this whole book takes like, what would you say, like a week and a half?
If that, yeah.
Because he keeps saying it's a week since the very beginning of the book, since he like first met Clarice. But I want to say that he says explicitly that he walks to work with her for 7 days before she disappears. So like less than a fortnight is what I'm going to definitively settle on. But she, like Mildred, his wife, commits suicide the day the book opens. Like she's pulled back from it, but she definitely does that. And then the whole book is like less than 2 weeks. Like she has not had a fucking period since she tried to die. That's how recently. And this, like, there's an argument that Guy Montag has with her sort of later in the book, and he just sort of angrily is grilling her, is just like, have you ever been truly bothered by anything? And just accusing her of not caring about anything and having no investment or feeling about anything at all. And just when you as a reader are about to be like, you motherfucker, like, you kept this woman alive. Like, she tried to escape in the most permanent way possible. And then his reaction to that realization that he has after that of like, oh yeah, remember when I found her almost dead? His reaction isn't like, okay, I screwed up. It's, oh man, it's so sad how little she knows herself. Like, he says that the woman he is talking with, Mildred, and the woman who tried to kill herself have never met. And it's like, maybe you have never actually met your wife, sir. It's so frustrating. Your thoughts?
I definitely think that there is... Montag has a very limited idea of not just Mildred, but also, like, her friends. Yeah. In the scene with the parlors. The way he treats them and the way, like, the whole, like, they've never met, she doesn't know herself. You kind of have to have a bit of self-knowledge to... Because the way he always says that the way she could, like, this is not the first time she has tried to commit suicide. Mm-hmm. And that it's her forgetfulness. She doesn't know that she's already taken sleeping pills, so she takes more, and then she takes more. And it's like, is she though, or is that what you are telling yourself that she does?
Yeah, I mean,
because you cannot handle her having this moment of, like, independence and self, like, realization. Not that, it's Not that it's good to commit suicide.
No, not at all.
But it's kind of her taking control of her situation.
He constantly undermines and undervalues her agency and her capacity, because he's angry at her that she didn't awaken him the way that Clarice did, is what it comes across as the whole book. And then later on, he's angry with her because he hasn't awakened her the way Clarice awakened him. But, like, Clarice, he notes that, like, it's her being interested in him and her reflecting him back to himself, and, like, empathy and, like, engagement that made Clarice different. And he never does that at any point. His awakening is completely self-involved. And he just kind of violently throws her into a dangerous situation by keeping books in their home.
And then being like, oh, we'll read. I'll read to you, and then you'll see. And it's like, that's not how you saw it.
Yeah, not at all. Like, that's not how you got even interested in engaging. You never engaged with her. And Faber, the professor, later in the book kind of calls him out on it. About, like, remember, like, a week ago, this was who you were too. And he just has no patience. He has no patience for women specifically. Because Beatty, he at least engages with. Kind of the other guys at the firehouse, he asks questions about the origin of firemen and things like that. But with all of the women, like, and it's not just him, it's other characters too. Like, even Faber says a really frustrating sentence that I'm trying to remember. I think he says, like, when Montag has his outburst where he reads poetry angrily at the women in the earpiece.
Yeah.
I want to say it's Faber.
Hang on, I think I bookmarked.
Yeah, he says,
one.
like, forget the poor silly women. I was like, ugh. Like, because I sort of at that point was like, oh, thank God, like, the book kind of isn't positioning Guy as this revolutionary thinker. They're just positioning him as this, like, raw little bundle of feelings that Faber is kind of helping to hone a little bit. But, like, just none of these dudes are, like, worth it. Like, none of these Deuterino book club is just still just like a boys club, and it's again a product of its time. And I'm not saying that like in any way diminishes the value of the book and the conversations it can spark, but I definitely think that should be part of the conversation.
I'm looking for the exact line.
Yeah.
I am at the section where Faber does try to get them to stop talking. Montag to stop talking.
Yeah, because Faber's like, we had a plan. What the fuck are you doing? Sir, please, no.
We were gonna go nice and slow, and once again, Montag cannot stand to go nice and slow.
I mean, it's not even that he, like, can't do something slow. It's that he can't do something privately. He's like a revolutionary exhibitionist in a lot of ways. Like, he'll sort of realize, like, oh yeah, the way that I need to get stuff done, and like, oh, I'm in danger in this situation. And, you know, there's definitely stuff there that's less about exhibitionism and more about, like, I just want to connect with another human being. But, like, he doesn't want to connect with his wife and her friends when they're watching TV. He wants to, like, punish them with poetry.
Yeah, it's the, forget the poor, silly women. And Montag says, I made them unhappier than they have been in years, I think. It shocked me to see Mrs. Phelps cry. Maybe they're right. Maybe it's best not to face things, to run, have fun. I don't know. I feel guilty.
Yeah.
So he kind of is just... action now. Well, let's consider our thoughts later.
Yeah.
He's not, and this is something we will see a lot of going forward, is that in some of our older dystopias, we have these kind of male protagonists who you're like, what the, I don't like them. They fucking suck. I hate them.
Yeah.
And then, oddly enough, a lot of our female protagonist ones, which are oddly enough going to be young adult driven things, tend to be a little bit more exposition laden, a little bit more clumsy in the way that they do it. And honestly, a lot of the times they are like they're the Clarice and they're the hero, but they're not a good Clarice.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, if this book had been centered around Clarice, it would be such, like, I talked about, like, it would be such a YA book, but I would be so into
Let
seeing...
me explain to this dumb boy the problems of this world. And
Hold up, though. Hold up. Enter into this world with me. Imagine a version of this book where Clarice is like, hey, Mildred, you're in the neighborhood all the time. Your hubby kind of freaks me out. Coming home smelling like smoke all the time. What if I just come over and talk to you a bunch?
Yeah, no, that would be a much better book.
Right? Like, oh my god, that would be so good.
Especially because, as a revolutionary, you've already got Montag, Powder Keg, about to go off, to use an apt illusion. Yeah. But the Mildred, she is, at that point in her life, she is surrounded by books.
Yeah, she totally is.
And she is looking for an escape or a reason, really. She needs to find a reason, a purpose. And if Clarice's family had been a little bit more like, hey, honey, don't go off like half-cocked and start talking to people if you deliberate in the revolution, she would have approached Mildred first.
I mean, I don't even... because I don't think it was even necessarily, like, Clarice trying to wake somebody up. Because I don't think that she necessarily appreciated his obsession with her or the way he interacted with her. Because there's a point where she kind of looks at him weird when they're talking. And it's like, you laugh when I haven't said anything funny. Why do you do that? And she kind of calls him on just being very, like, you know...
overly attentive.
Yeah, attentive and fake. And, like, just imagine a universe in which... Okay, let's figure out what the trilogy for this would be like. Clarice comes to this new town with her uncle. Sees this fireman dude. Is freaked out by him. Because she does say that she is freaked out by him. In their first...
Yeah. He is terrifying.
Yeah. And so, like, maybe she glimpses Mildred one day and, like, comes over with some flowers or something. It's like, hey, we just came to the neighborhood. Mildred doesn't know what to do with this. Mildred invites her into her home because that's what you do. She's a housewife. She does like being around people and talking to people. And you get this whole wonderful scene of, like, Mildred and Clarice in the house, and she's, like, pointing out all the different little things about the house that she likes. Mildred is confused by this young teen. Not obsessed with her, 'cause she ain't no creep. But, like, she points out...
I think we could also get a very nice scene of them in the parlor where, you know, Clarice can point out, do you think people really act like this?
Or... Clarice, like, Mildred's really excited to show off the new interactive feature with the script she got. And Clarice is like, what if you said this instead? Boom. Mildred doesn't know what to do. Her mind has been blown. They become BFFs. And you better believe that when Mildred starts looking around her house, she's like, that vent grill sure looks funky. That looks fiddled with. Oh, what's behind there? Books.
Dun, dun, dun.
Boom. All of a sudden, you got Among the Hidden for books.
You all about that Among the Hidden.
And look, anything that's about, like, oh, you can't have the third child. This little baby sister has feelings about.
Aw, little bud.
I mean, I can only think of two books off the top of my head, like Among the Hidden and Ender's Game, but, you know, it's almost a pattern.
There's a book that I read as a child. It's a dystopia. Maybe we'll get to it someday. Who knows? that is about cloning technology.
Mm.
And it is about God, I don't even remember. I think like you're not allowed to meet who you're cloned from. I mean, and then you have the whole like I don't know, cloning technology and like the
Was this
idea.
about like
It's very
was this about
interesting.
a bunch of like real hot teens who were clones?
No, this was about like a little fourth grader who was a clone and had to go in front of this high fucking court and say, "I
Well,
deserve to be a person."
now Bridget, I feel uncomfortable because I definitely read a book about some like hot teen clones, like some clones, and you were like, oh, this is very interesting because there is a science plot, but also as a youth, you were like, hot teens. That's what I want to be one day, said 14-year-old Caitlin. It wasn't going to happen, but aspirations are important in this world.
No, this was about, she was like, there is like a scene 2/3 of the way through the book where she has to go, and she's like 9, maybe 10. I got it at the Scholastic Book Fair, Natch. And she has to go plead her personhood and say, I deserve not to be put to death for being who I am and existing.
I got one thing to say for little Susie fourth grader. Good point.
Yeah, it's a very good book. It's like, why is that up for debate?
So
it is in dystopias.
I feel like we've like firmly both put ourselves of the opinion this book would be better if Clarice and Mildred formed a BFF team and it took down the planet, I guess, is what I'm really getting at.
Once again, the point remains, as it remains with most things. Mm-hmm. If you revolutionize the housewives, you have the power.
Yep. This some Liz Estrada shit. Give me a book, or you get none, sir.
Exactly.
Right? That's oh boy. I don't want to unpack that any further, that sentence I just said. That
we'll just leave that
where it's gotta
be. Leave that in the corner, let it think about what it's done.
Oh, and it's done some stuff.
It's done some terrible
That's not
things.
what I wanted. God, this is also part of the reason I was so excited to try to get an actual physical book, is because I'm trying to find all my notes that I took and like highlighted bits, and I can't find it, Bridget. I can't find it.
See, I have my physical book, and I have dog-eared all the pages that I think were interesting or relevant, because it's my book. I paid for it.
No, I mean,
I'm gonna treat it like it is.
This is why I wanted a physical copy, Bridget.
Dog-earing an undog-eared page is extremely satisfying. I will say, so I finished my book over some queso and House Margarita at Torchy's Tacos here in Austin. Not my favorite taco, but you know what? Convenient. Hold up.
Did you say Torchy's?
I did finish reading this book at Torchy's.
You read Fahrenheit 451 at a place called Torchy's?
At a fire-themed taco restaurant, yes I did. But I did spill queso on a couple pages.
And that's just when your children's children find that tome hidden in the attic from the fireman squad.
I'd be like, what's this weird orange stain?
They'll be like, precious books.
But I wrote all my notes down in my moleskin because I'm that guy.
And that's fine. That's fine, Bridget.
I know myself.
It's okay. Okay, I'm gonna try to find this in a search function. Please, engage our audience while I do this.
So I wanted to get into a little research segment that we're planning on doing for each of these books. And the first one falls to me, and I wanted to research the tech in this book. I was initially going to go into like VR technology, and then I thought about it, and I'm like, oh man, I can cover that in like 80% of the books we're about to do. And it's not so much VR technology in this one, even though your boy loves VR technology. Anytime I can get my hot little greedy raccoon hands on a VR headset at a convention, I'm on it, like white on rice. It's crazy.
I do
But I
love
did want to
VR
talk
a
about
whole bunch.
Yeah, it's the greatest. It's the future. Anyone who says otherwise. I saw an article, I will say, in researching VR at first, I did see an article from like fucking Time, which, ugh, you're dead, you're dying, go away, your website stinks. Where they mentioned, they were like, is VR gonna go the way of the 3D TV? Overhyped and unusable? And I'm like, eat my fucking ass.
Oh, wow. I was gonna blaze
No.
right past that, but Bridget, I could not. Bridget, I could not. That look.
But I did want to talk about the parlors.
Yes.
And how that can kind of exist today. So I did a little math, and I did a little math. I went to a website that had a calculator that calculates inflation rates. Mildred, Guy mentions that it was $2,000 to get the third wall installed, and they're still paying it off. And I'm like, okay, that always bothers me about older, like, what a millennial I am. That always bothers me about older, like, dystopias trying to, like, write forward, or any book that's trying to write about the future, is that they still use their time money instead of, like, inventing a new currency.
Yeah, I mean, it is still pretty strongly America. Like, there are still some, like,
Yeah.
I think they talk about how, like, Cambridge or something. No, I don't remember.
It's very strongly America, and they do talk about how the rest of the world is poor, and that America has thrived in this warlike environment, which, wow,
Can we address the fact that it's not just, like, a warlike environment? They explicitly say there have been 2 nuclear wars on this planet.
Yes. Yeah. But so $2,000 is how much it cost for them to get the third wall installed. $2,000 in 1950 is $20,000 in today's economy, which actually is interesting. So firemen make about $60,000 a year, according to that math, which I mean, I make less than $20,000 a year, so that sounds great to me. So what we have in today's technology, you could actually make the video room. You can make a parlor. In fact, probably more advanced than Bradbury could have ever imagined today. And LED video wall screens cost about $17,000 to $25,000 per square meter.
Dang.
So he wasn't, given that how close and how small the room is, it would be on the lower end of that price scale that I just named. So he actually was not that far off in his estimate of how much it costs to make a complete solid video wall. I cannot get an exact quote for a room size, because then I would have to get on an email list. And the last thing I need is a bunch of emails taunting me with, this stuff you'll never afford.
Here's the thing, Bridget. Like, is that even good for us to have a video wall? Wouldn't you rather have a book?
Okay, ma'am.
I was being Ray Bradbury. I feel like that was an impeccable Ray Bradbury impersonation.
Yes, I will say there is a section, let me pop up into the page, because I have a book. At one point, Faber and Montag are talking about the televisor, where Montag says, "My wife says books aren't real," and Faber responds, "Thank God for that. You can shut them, say, hold on a moment. You play God to it. But who has ever torn himself from the claw that encloses you when you drop a seed in a TV parlor? It grows any shape it wishes. It is an environment as real as the world. It becomes, and it is the truth. Books can be beaten down with reason." Which is true of TV. You can make them whatever you want. They can make you whatever they want. Ugh, spooky.
I will say there were some things.
Rereading this again, I will say it definitely harkened to the 1999 Disney Channel original movie Smart House.
Good God, Bridget, no, we're trying.
Yes,
We're trying
Because
to
there
have
is
an
a
erudite
parlor
conversation
in
about a book.
Smart House. There is a parlor even more advanced than the one in Fahrenheit 451 because Pat, the house's AI, can simulate breeze and motion within this parlor, and also play Slam Dunk Defunk by Five, the music video.
You're
Which,
right,
by
that
the
is
way,
highly
the
advanced.
boys perform a choreographed dance to, and that's bullshit. Hey, that's bullshit. No freaking 9 to 13-year-old that I knew in 1999 boy knew how to do a choreographed boy band dance so seamlessly and would just do it. They just did it. It's like, oh, time to do this dance.
Here's the thing, Bridget, like, television shows us wonderful worlds that are better than the ones that we have. And so would the 90s have been a better place if most of the boys that you knew could do boy band dances on command?
Obviously. Although of all of them, Slam Dunk Defunk, which was not even like, it's a British boy band, and sure, it was apparently the NBA like song that they used over like the season reels, you know?
I mean, God bless. When you get a topical song, you use it.
But not in 1999. Give me some NSYNC, give me some Backstreet Boys. Even 90, I'll even take 98 Degrees.
I'm gonna say something real quick. I love that that's the thing
Yes.
that your disbelief could not be suspended for. In that whole big movie.
Well, I mean, sentient AI, I can get behind, and you know, video walls, as I've discussed, are you can make
real.
They are insanely expensive. You can even do it as a touch screen.
I mean that's
So,
just gonna get your
I will say that
your parlor walls all mucked up.
yeah, you can. Parlor walls are a reality now. You can really have that parlor. As we've discussed, seashell radios are not dissimilar to the Apple Airbuds. I'm giving them the wrong name, but I'll never be.
It don't matter.
I'm good with
it doesn't matter even a little bit what those things are called. Everyone knows what you're talking about.
Good.
You know what they aren't gonna have from this book, though? Mechanical Hound.
Oh, but they are.
Bridget, if you research this, I'm gonna be angry.
I did.
What?
Yeah, it wasn't even that hard, because in today's society, when you think about a mechanical hound, they do exist. They're not up to the point of the hound in this book. They're not that fast. They're not that agile yet. But they do exist.
Yeah, they're those things that you used to see in KB Toys.
No, it is,
That's the only acceptable mechanical hound.
You might know, Boston Dynamics Big Dog.
Oh, shit. I mean, but here's the thing. We're not talking like just a regular robot.
Like
we're not just saying
boy.
like a robot that's kind of basically just not like perambulating about on two legs. Like, that's not the only parameters here. Like, this is a little critter that scuttles around on multiple legs that has a little needle nose that comes out and murders you, and then it drags you away to burn you.
Yeah, so it's not just the Big Dog is presented very affably, I would say, on the videos, the very few videos that we have of him. But more so is they have a new one that's called like Handy or something that moves very quickly and has wheels. And there's the MIT Cheetah Robot, which if you watch the demos of is kind of terrifying, because what it does is it's just a demo of it jumping. It scans with a like QuickTime like radius. It scans, sees how high the obstacle that is coming towards it is, calculates the step changes it needs to make, and makes it so that it can leap over it. And this thing is fast. Cheetah is not like a misnomer on this bad boy. It is going very quickly.
It'd be pretty funny if it was, though. Like,
Yeah.
if you just
Cheetah
had, like, the most ironically named
boom.
robot, and you're just like, this is my good friend Cheetah, outrolls the world's first robotic slug. Get him.
But so the Hound is actually not that far off. The most unrealistic part so far, which we're probably not that far off from, is the pheromone scanner, and it being able to scan your particular scent. But I mean, we're not that far off. It could probably, with the technology leaps that we have made in DNA identification today, we could probably get it to hook onto a person's DNA signature and track them that way.
I mean, on the one hand, sure, like, there's so much shared DNA, like, DNA, I mean, I didn't research the same way you did, but I know that, like, DNA's, like, accurate, but it's not infallible.
Oh, absolutely.
And, which, you know, in the book, they kind of don't care if it's infallible, because they end up just murdering another dude and being like, haha,
exactly.
we got it.
In a dystopia, though, you can make people submit to, like, specific, like, DNA, like, oh, we're gonna swab this and get your skin cell samples, and
yeah, I mean,
all that
I
good
think
stuff.
that currently the version of that you would end up having is just like, you know, if you enable this, like, one switch on your iPhone, it can take just the tiniest bit of genetic material when you unlock it with your thumb. And then, like, you know what I mean? It's just going to be some, like, dumb Apple thing.
They do have that technology, and I was almost bothered by how offhand it's mentioned how Montag unlocks his house, which is to stick his whole hand in, and it gets a full palm reading.
The thing is, I think that he says he let the house know his touch. And it was like, Jesus, bro.
Ugh, gross.
Like, ease off a little bit.
But yeah, so we're not that far off from pretty much almost all of the technology that exists within Fahrenheit 451.
Oof. I mean, I maintain that, like,
The Hound is real, and there are videos of scientists pushing it over and laughing.
oh, that just makes me feel bad for robo-dogs. Like, which this book did a little bit as well. Like, the Hound is really scary as a force in the book, but there are a couple times where Montag's like, it only is like this because it's what we taught it to do. And then it kind of tries to, like, get at him, and he's like, ugh, it's a monster. This has negatively impacted me. It must be terrible.
Never mind. I lied. I was wrong.
It's interesting. Okay, do you mind? The way that he
That's all I
interacts
had
with,
on
like,
my science end was that everything's real. Be terrified.
Here's the thing. I have a fair amount of my family is, like, pretty suspicious of a lot of technologies, but, like, I'm just too optimistic. Like, I'm definitely gonna die, like, stage 1 of any dystopia, because I'm just like, yeah, but, like, it's exciting. We've figured out this cool new thing, and, like, yeah, someone could use it to murder someone, but someone could also just have a nice little doggo. Like, you're gonna make it.
Oh no, yeah. If it's a technology-based dystopia,
Yeah.
if it's a VR-based dystopia, as so many of them are, bye. I'm committing to the cause.
We're early adopters. We're gonna get murdered so fast. Thank you for all that research, friend.
No problem. This is stuff I look up. I'm one of those weirdo kids who looks up a lot of weird stuff in their spare time.
You're so weird. Oh my god. Buy a shirt at Hot Topic, Bridget. I don't know, I'm kind of scanning through my notes and seeing if there's anything that I hated about Guy Montag that we can talk about. I feel like I'm, like, gonna come across as, like, she dismissed this book just because the main character wasn't likable, and that's absolutely not what's happening. I really enjoyed the book. I did think it was kind of... I feel like there's a parallel that can be drawn with like the way that Montag reacted to the manhunt and seeing himself on TV, with Mildred's scripted participation in her stories with the parlor walls and like the personalized name converter that speaks directly to her. And she was like,
I'm going to
she's
that
like
part.
she was very entranced by that, but then like at the very end, when he's at Faber's house and he's I feel like we didn't give this pretty intense part of the book very much discussion. He like murders his boss like so intensely.
Oh,
like
yeah.
he burns his house down because they tell him to, and then he turns the flamethrower on his boss, and he holds on a second, and he's like, "Oh, are we gonna do it? Are we gonna burn this man to death?" And then he's like, "Fuck it," and lights him up like a birthday candle. And then maybe 5 minutes later, he's like, "Nah, it's his fault. He wanted to die. He wouldn't have made me mad otherwise." Guy Montag is a fucking monster. But he like, his escape, just the whole end of the book, I'm just like, you're an animal, dude. Like, what the fuck? Cause, so he incapacitates his coworkers, he murders his boss, he runs around and like tries to save the last few books he has hidden around his property, and then he takes off. The only place he really stops, for any significant amount of time that isn't to do with like covering his tracks or running away, is he stops at a coworker's house and plants all of the books in his house just to sort of arbitrarily burn his house down, because he burned other people's houses down, so he deserves it. And the book kind of like sort of tries to retcon that, like, oh yeah, that was because like he was thinking about the plan that him and Faber had to like sow dissent among the fire. That's not what he's thinking about when he does it. He's just like, oh, this guy deserves it. And then he stands there and like pictures his coworker's wife watching her home fall inward and collapse. And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. And then to be able to like do that act of, in this situation, honestly, petty revenge, like it doesn't accomplish anything. He plants the books. Those books are gonna get burned. He has like no moral consistency. Ugh. But when he gets to Faber's house, sorry, I'm just going off on a tear, Bridget. If there's any point where you're fine. Like, me too, I also have thoughts, like, just cut me off. But he gets to Faber's house, and the manhunt for him is being televised, and his thought is, that's all taking place just for me, by God. And he's just fixated on it. He's obsessed.
It's identical to the it's identical to the parlor, where it's like,
yeah,
you're special. This is about you. We're talking
like he
to
just
you.
achieves like a stronger hit of the like drug of interaction with TV that Mildred was kind of chasing. And he almost dies because of it, because he like can't drag himself away from the screen. And then Faber's like, bro, you gotta move. But like all of these things that he just drags other people for, and all of these images that he has of himself as this like noble man working towards something, there's no consistency. He'll betray it at the drop of a hat if he's like, I'm mad at you, so I'm gonna burn your house down, and like sort of revel in like how hard it'll be for your wife to watch it happen. Or I'm gonna say that you're like a fucking white bacon golem for your TV obsession, and then almost like lose my life because I'm like, oh, I'm on the TV.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting because that was like technically his plan all along, was to print up books, real or not real, to make reprintings of the Bible and hide them in every single fireman's house.
Yeah, and like that's like part of a plan they were working on.
And so he's like, well, I'll at least do this one.
But that's not what. If he only does, he wasn't even thinking about that when he did it, though. He was just like, yeah, he deserves this. And it's, if he only does it one time, he's not gonna get close to any other fireman's house. He's like, he already ruined his own plan, and he's literally just burning the house down out of spite. And then when he finally gets to the people who have memorized the books, they're just like, you're nothing, you're no one, you're just a book now. They immediately follow him. Like, he leads them back to the city and he kind of lets someone else try to take the lead, and they're like, no, Guy Montag, you first. Lead the way, Book Jesus.
Which is so dumb, because he knows, like, a little bit of two.
Yeah.
Not even full books of the Bible.
Like, he doesn't have whole tomes in there, and he doesn't even remember them right now. They're just like, oh, we got some memory tricks. Everyone has an eidetic memory, right?
That's the dumbest, yeah.
It's no good. I would much rather see, like, a series of short stories about, like, all the different towns that he mentioned, where, like, there's one town where it's all of the essays of a particular philosopher and stuff like that. That part was really engaging, but then it just switched back to Guy Montag having feelings, which is a large portion of the book and not the best part of it. I would like to ask you a question.
I'm listening.
How good of a point do you think he has, Ray Bradbury, kind of with the book?
It's hard for me to be objective, I guess. With regards to, because here's the thing, books, love them, gotta have them. Especially growing up as a child. But what was also very important for my development was television. Mm-hmm. Because here's the thing, is that, and especially with, like, all the, like, reading disabilities and stuff that I know my mom sees pretty regularly on, like, a daily basis where she works, reading is important. Don't get me wrong. Books are important. But God, a lot of the ones that we hold to such high standards suck so bad. And television is so important. And television, anybody can watch television. Anybody can learn from television. But there are a lot of people who have trouble learning from books and retaining the knowledge that they learn from books.
I will say,
and
if I may, just super quickly.
Yes, go on.
Faber, in the book, does make the point that he's like, television can have all of the same things that books have. It's the way that television is now, and the way that, like, it's not just that they don't allow books, it's that they don't allow complex and individual stories and, like, contradicting stories and things like that. That it's the complexity that makes any story important and real, and that it would, not that it would be fine if they didn't allow books, but they let television be complex, but that he did make the point that television itself wasn't inherently bad or worth less.
But the point to which they've gotten, which I will say there is something interesting that Faber does, and that he kind of tirades against, and that was the beginning of the end, almost, which is he mentions comic books.
Yeah.
That was, and it's so funny because I am sure at that point, comic books were seen as, like, stuff for children. But now comic books have become this huge talking point of, oh, they're inappropriate because there's violence and there's, like, these ideas.
Well, it's also like
in comic books.
Comic book legal defense fund is, like, such a bastion for the type of free speech that, like, is specifically being championed in this book. So it's just kind of ironic that, like, such a strong proponent for free speech is coming from this type of storytelling that Ray Bradbury kind of specifically calls out in, I feel like, one of his kind of ciphery type characters. There's a thing that struck me. I'm curious as to your opinion about it. I'm gonna paraphrase a little bit because it is from the 50s. But he kind of this isn't Faber. This is. Did you pronounce the chief's name as Beatty?
Yeah.
Because I was like, is it Beatty or Beatty or anyway, the fire chief,
Beatty.
whatever.
I know someone who has that name as their first name. So.
But he's describing how society kind of condensed information and storytelling and grew to distrust complexity. So black people don't like Little Black Sambo, burn it. White people don't feel good about Uncle Tom's Cabin, burn it. Someone's written a book on tobacco and cancer of the lungs. The cigarette people are weeping, burn the book. Serenity, Montag. Peace, Montag. Take your fight outside. Better yet, into the incinerator. Funerals are unhappy and pagan. Eliminate them too. 5 minutes after a person is dead, he's on his way to the big flu. The incinerator is serviced by helicopters all over the country. 10 minutes after death, a man's a speck of black dust. Let's not quibble over individuals with memoriams. Forget them. Burn all, burn everything. Fire is bright and fire is clean. Somewhere, it's not that particular section. It's part of this larger conversation he has about how society is vast and minority pressure about the stories that were told to the masses made people not willing to tell those stories. And I feel like with that particular section about Uncle Tom's Cabin and Little Black Sambo, it was the 50s, so the discourse has progressed quite a bit. But reading that in our times, it's impossible to not think of that, like, the assertion people make that PC culture ruins art.
Yeah.
Which is a sentiment that I find very frustrating, because reading that, I kind of understood what the fundamental disagreement I have with that assertion is, which is they're saying that, like, if you criticize people who try to tell stories like this, then people will just stop telling those stories, when that's not what anyone that I've ever heard who has objections to, like, bad art, that's not what they're calling for. Like, a reaction to that could certainly be like, oh yeah, let's, like, just stop writing those stories then, and, like, get mad and take your toys home or whatever. But I think personally it sort of helps solidify for me that, like, oh, like, the other thing that everyone else is saying, well, this could also happen, is, like, you could have more people telling those stories and, like, listen to people who can tell those stories better. And no one's gonna be telling those stories or getting better at telling those stories if critique doesn't happen. But it was really interesting because it just feels like such a book that is touted as, like, oh, like, censorship from the government, but it has some of the same ideas of, like, the underlying core is, like, people did this by not being willing to, like, hear our stories. But, like, Little Black Sambo was written by, like, a white Scottish lady. And is, like, mad offensive. Like, you know? Because it's interesting, because there are just elements of the book where I'm like, oh, that's... I understand you're writing from a place of, like, I'm a writer with feelings, Ray Bradbury, but that's... okay. I don't necessarily agree there.
He very much does the thing where it's like, I know everything. And you get that a lot, I think, with most authors, especially dude authors, tend to do that. Sorry, guys. Not that women are excluded from it by any fashion. But,
dudes just have, like, a learned confidence a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that might be the extent of my note. I just wanted to, like, kind of talk about that, because especially with the whole, like, the firemen, it's sort of reading like the firemen were all white, and just, like, the prevalence of, like, white people in this book to the exclusion of, it kind of seems like anyone else.
Yeah. You don't really, people are only described as white ever in this book, which is weird and upsetting.
It's strongly notable. like how extremely focused it is on like all the dudes
How
are,
pale
yeah,
everyone
like
is.
I mean, Faber, when he comes to the door, I think he's described as being so white that he's almost translucent. Like, that's the level. And then both his wife and Clarice are compared to the moon, and like all of the firemen are all look the same, and it like specifically mentions their heritage. And then there's a part in the book about like race caused part of like the disintegration of the complexity of stories being told in the society. And it's a little weird because it feels like he has ideas about what race means in this book, but he doesn't go very far with it. He only brings it up twice, and it's not, you know,
Yes.
like he talks more explicitly about like how comfortable people like really want to see people with like smooth, poreless skin. He talks more about driving, driving rules and cruelty against animals than he does against about what race is like in this story, which is weird when he has two things that feel like there's a strong story there that he just doesn't get into.
It'd be interesting to know why he did not include
Yeah.
race issues. Did he feel unequipped to handle them, or because it's not like in any way, shape, or form they are solved in the version of the world that people are living in.
No, but it's also that it's they're not solved, but they're also not. It's just not depicted. It's just missing. And it's interesting because like I feel as if there is, there's discussion of it, and there's certainly depiction of, different gendered expectations and stuff. And so this is a huge part of the way the world turned out that he built, and the way society is structured, and he just doesn't. He hints at it, but doesn't go there, and it's frustrating. Anyway, but I'm pretty sure that's like all of the things that I had super strong feelings about.
Now, we did have a little section
Yeah.
planned. And if you would like to do the you're doing amazing. Let me try that again. If you would like to do the you're doing amazing, sweetie, where we highlight someone who we think is doing amazing in the book, named for the wonderful moment where with Taraji P. Henson filming on her iPhone. God bless Taraji P. Henson. She is my everything. Caitlin, the floor is yours.
So this was a tough one because I don't like most of the people in the book.
No, they all kind of suck ass.
So I was gonna go with Clarice because I mean she is, an innocent.
She's kind of your only option, really.
Here's the she is. I feel like the whole book is like coddling her. Like she doesn't act like a teen. She acts like a 10-year-old. Like she's almost so strongly not of this world that she falls into this sort of the like Fifth Element kind of trope where it's like a like child woman.
What is it called? Born Sexy Yesterday.
Yeah, that one. And like it's that's almost what she is in the book. And so to kind of coddle her further and be like, "You're doing great, sweetie." Here's the thing, she ain't doing great, She did.
She got hit by a jet car and died.
And so I was gonna pick it, but it was sort of a listless selection. And that's not the vibe you want to have, like, "You're doing great, sweetie." That doesn't come out of you in like a dispassionate way, if I'm using that word correctly. I might not be. But so I'm gonna go with my heart, and I'm gonna say the Mechanical Hound is doing great, my little puppers. Because
He's doing so good because he's doing his
he's doing
job.
his best, man. Like, leave him alone. Stop giving, like, it's entirely, he's so reflective. I thought way too much about the Mechanical Hound because I just wanted to have him be.
And you didn't think it was gonna be real?
I mean, here's the thing. I didn't think it was gonna be real because this is what got to me. So, like, Clarice has causes this final awakening in Montag. Like, he's sort of been building towards it. He's been, like, storing books or whatever. But because she engages with him and reflects himself back to her. And the Mechanical Hound is the same way for this whole society. Like, the Hound, he talks about it like, it doesn't have to kill people. But people in the firehouse, like, feed it the DNA of, like, rats and animals around there. And, like, there's this whole subcurrent of, like, cruelty to animals in this book that's very unsettling. And they program the Mechanical Hound to do that the same way they program it to, like, hunt down people with books. And, hunt down Montag in the end. But that's not who he is. He's just reflecting back the people who made him. He's just a little robo-pup. He's just a little computer dog.
Well, he's a giant robo dog that has 8 legs.
He does have 8 legs, but that's not his fault.
How big do you think the Hound is? They don't really give direct mentions. They, like, give, like, ideas of his size, but to have 8 legs and to be able to tackle a fully grown adult man that is probably as big as Montag would be, which is probably pretty tall. We're talking,
pictured
like,
it
5'10", 5'11".
Oh, that's not what I was gonna say. Because
No, I'm talking about Montag.
Oh,
Montag.
okay. I thought you were saying the dog was, and I was like, I've been bowled over by a dog before. It was not 5'11". But
hind legs, though.
Yeah, I think when I pictured the Mechanical Hound, it was a little bit shorter than, like, a dirt bike and just longer than a dirt bike a little bit. I had a very specific design in mind, but he's still a good baby. He's a good baby.
He's still a good boy.
He just needs to be taught better tricks. He's so good at what he does.
He's so good at
trying
playing
his
fetch.
best. He's so good at playing fetch. Who's a good boy? It's the Mechanical Hound. He's the sweetie, and he's doing such a good job.
Feed him the pheromones of a tennis ball.
Oh my god! Imagine, like, just take that needle out of his nose, you dingus. Just let him be a dog. So that's who I've selected. I have a lot of anger and frustration for Clarice, who is a good, sweet girl, but she does need to grow up a little bit. It's a bummer that she won't ever, because A, she got knocked down by a car, and B, she fake. But Mechanical Hound, as you said, could be real one day, and when that day comes, we need to be good buds with that sweet pup. It's my
So,
final answer.
Mechanical Hound, you're doing amazing, sweetie.
So yeah, in future, we're gonna be switching off, so I'm gonna pick something from the next book to kind of research and get into a little bit, and Bridget will be selecting the Sweetie Pie.
Oh, and next week's book is gonna be hard.
I forgot what next week's book is.
Oh, I was looking at it. So the next book we are going to be doing is Stephanie Meyer's The Host. So we gave you what is considered a classic of Western literature, arguably. It is one of the most famous, if not the most famous, banned book. Fahrenheit 451, critically lauded. And now we're going to take a hard left. Just possibly even a hairpin U-turn.
Do you want to know something a little fucked up, Bridget? You want to know something real bad?
It's gonna
I
get
already
rough.
have a copy of it, and it's signed. No!
Oh, no. See, I have to go to Half Price Books and try to
The
find
past is a
one.
terrible hell where all my sins live.
See, at least I never bought a Stephanie Meyer book. I just got them from the library when I was a baby Ute.
Well, no accounting for...
What was she like in person?
You know what? She was real pleased. that was her main... She was just like, oh, yeah, oh, hi. Like, some people might call it gracious. I'm gonna call it well pleased.
A little smug, maybe.
Yeah, I saw her in Portland. And two of the dudes who played part of the Wolf Pack were there. Not officially, they just came. They were just hanging out. They just wanted to
thanks for the job.
I think they were a little bit hoping to pick up some babes. So I don't know how successful they were.
Yeah, so that is what we are doing next week. I will be doing I will be picking our sweetie. And you will be doing research.
I got 3 words for you about picking a sweetie for that book. Good fucking luck. They are all irritating.
So yeah, join us next time when we cover Stephanie Meyer's The Host. Let's get into aliens.
Yeah,
kids.
let's do it.
Let's get into aliens and let some aliens get into us.
Sorry, it sounded sexual, and I got upset.
I meant it to sound sexual,
Okay.
So goal achieved.
Good, I'm glad, I guess. All right, we will see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Could Be Worse. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider subscribing and rating our podcast in the iTunes store or wherever you get your podcasts. We're trying to make sure we're out there as much as possible, so if you don't see us on your favorite podcast venue, please let us know. You can follow the podcast on Twitter or Facebook with the handle @CouldBeWorsePod, and check out more from your humble and loving hosts on Twitter and Instagram at the handles @MagnesiumQueen for Bridget and @Caitlin Obum for the one of us who is named that. Immense thanks and credit to musical artist Dexter Britton for making his inestimable instrumentals Seeing the Future and Waking Up available under Creative Commons over at the Free Music Archive. Thank you for listening, and we will see you in 2 weeks.